the show. My name's Tom Springer. I'm the host of Stuff I Never Learned from the School Book. If you're seeing the bearded one, that must mean it's Monday night, 7 p.m. Central, 8 Eastern, 6 Mountain, 5 Pacific, 2 out in Hawaii, 6 a.m. tomorrow morning out in Indonesia. Hello. And about 9 a.m. tomorrow out in Australia. Welcome, everybody. Again, my name is Tom Springer, and I am the host of the show Stuff I Never Learned from the School Book. If you are a repeat offender, welcome back. If you are new, welcome to the show. I already see we have a couple people that are tuning in that are here for Jessica. They know she's here, and they're like chanting her name, and I just see it on the sideline. So I'm just going to go ahead and bring her in. She's a past guest of mine, but it's been a while. We haven't talked to her for a while, so I'm just going to go ahead and bring her in, and we're going to say hi to Jessica. Hello, Miss Jessica. How are you?
Hey, Tom. It's always fun hanging out with you, and it's good to see you again.
Right, you already got a couple people chiming in saying hello. You have Kai Anna, you have B-Man.
Hey, y'all.
Stuart saying hi from Texas.
What's up, Stuart? Hey, Greg. I see Greg in here, too. There's a few people. Actually, I saw at least one of those people was at the Squatch Out this weekend in East Tennessee that I was at. Oh, yeah.
That's awesome. Yep, there's Nikki saying hello. Miss Rosie saying hello. Everyone's kind of dipping in saying hi like normal, so I'm glad everyone's on time. Good students that they are. They're actually my problem children, so I don't expect anything. But anyways, welcome back to the show. It's been a while since I've had you on. And you have been out and about running around quite a bit lately. But before we get into that, I always try to tell people how we met. And what's really weird is like you and I just met through here. You popped up as a friend request. I had no idea who you were. And I went out and I went ahead and watched a couple of your shows, and I was intrigued, to say the least. And I was like, all right, let's see if she responds and doesn't think I'm just some kind of crazy psycho stalker person. So I wrote you saying, hello, this is who I am. This is what I do. And this is when I was relatively new to the show. I mean, you were really one of my first guests that were on my show. And you were brave enough to say yes. And you came on and we did a show. And we've basically been following each other, watching each other, talking to each other ever since. It was trying to bring you back on. So, and for people who ask that question, why do I wait so long? It's simply because I give you more time to do more things. So we have to talk about. And see, Rosie is. So some stuff that you have missed, well, actually you've seen it because you watched the show, but you haven't been on the show since this happened. But people are always expecting squirrel moments coming from my show. Don't worry, we will not disappoint. Me and Jessica will be full of squirrel moments. You have no problem with that. But do me a favor and reintroduce yourself to people who don't know who you are. I have not met you before. And then tell them what you do, who you are, what you do, and how you got into doing what you're doing now.
Okay, well, I am Jessica Jones, and some people know me as the Cryptid Huntress. I am a longtime Bigfoot field researcher / all things paranormal and supernatural and cryptid researcher. Okay, and I'm from Georgia. I started doing Bigfoot field research around 2011. I'm on 4 different teams now. Okay, I was on 3 different teams for a long time, and I just joined up with another team this past year that does really active investigations of. We went to a Skinwalker cave last year, Dogman hunt investigations, and yeah, that's what I've been doing lately. We'll talk about that tonight.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's really fun. I mean, I'm a diehard boots on the ground researcher, always have been. But somewhere along the line, somebody coaxed me into going on speaking at a conference. I did not go public for 10 years with my research. I never meant to go public. I never had any intention of going public because, see, I never felt like I needed to prove anything to anybody with my research. That's not why I research. I don't research to prove it to the world. I'm looking to prove things to myself, okay, right. To experience things for myself, not even to prove stuff, but just to get the experience of it, to see if Bigfoot's real.
Right.
I want to see if Dogman's real. Okay, I'm still in the hunt for Dogman. But if there's Dogman out there, I've been right in the middle of where they are. I just haven't seen one yet. But it's coming. It's definitely coming. So But yeah, so yeah.
What
Oh,
brought you, what started you off on this mad method that you're going through of deciding to go to 4 teams now instead of just 3? So what started you off way in the beginning?
yeah. Well, in the beginning, I was on. I had no intention of even looking for Bigfoot, but the opportunity came across my path, and I took it. When I was, I guess I was in my 30s or so. I mean, I'm not going to tell you how old I am, okay? But
39. 39.
39. I'm in my 40s, okay? But a while back, I had gone to a meeting, and it was like one of those community. It was like a man in near Atlanta, Mr. Sam. A lot of the people in the esoteric community in Atlanta knew Mr. Sam. He's passed away now, but him and his partner Verlene, Sam and Verlene, would have people over at their house every Wednesday night, and there would be a speaker that gave a presentation every Wednesday night, and they never missed a Wednesday night. It was like clockwork, and they would bring people in to talk about tarot cards, Bigfoot, gold and silver, survivalist skills, you name it. I mean, hypnotists, magicians. It was never ending. I mean, there was always something interesting, and they were just like a big family. And my mom got linked up with them at some point, and then I would go with her to those meetings because they were so interesting.
Yeah.
And the people were, I mean, some actually kind of big names in the UFO community and the spiritual community and even the Bigfooting community and stuff. I mean, any community, like everybody knew Sam and Verlene.
Right.
And so, yeah, I met a lot of really cool people. I mean, people who briefed presidents on aliens and stuff would be there. And so I was like, I can't not go to this.
Right.
And so my mom said one day, she was like, "Hey, Jess, there's these guys that have a Bigfoot research team that are going to talk about Bigfoot. I think you might want to go to this. It might be fun." And so I met her over there, and that's where I met the guys who were on my first team. Hey, William. I was on a show with William last night.
On the show with William last night. I was hearing you guys talk.
Thank you. Yeah. So I went to this meeting, and the guys had 100% proof Bigfoot's real. They had all the evidence there. The track lines. I mean, they're all survivalists. They're all expert trackers, and military backgrounds and stuff. And I was just really mesmerized by what they were presenting. And I had all these really funny questions like, well, where's the body? Why have y'all not found a body yet? Where's the poop? Okay, I want to know where the Bigfoot poop is. I'm a girl that lives in the country. I see poop of all sorts. Where's the Bigfoot poop? Okay. And so they just thought it was interesting that I had such an interest in it. And so they invited me to an expedition that was going to be within the month or 2 months. And they put me on their email list, and they said, well, come with us. They're going to have a group expedition with people that weren't on their team. They only had 4 guys on their team. But they wanted to kind of open it up to friends and family to go to a fun expedition. And they invited me. And so I gathered up all the gear. I didn't want to look stupid, like I didn't know what I was doing. So I went and I bought a tent, and I took it to my best friend's house. And her husband, who is a camper, he does a lot of hiking and camping. He's outdoorsman. He helped me set up my tent. He showed me kind of how to do it. And we went over all my equipment, and I made sure I knew how to use it before I went. But I set up my tent in their backyard to make sure I knew what I was doing with it. But I bought I was consulting with my cousin about hiking boots, all this stuff. I mean, I really was excited about it, but I ended up going, and I got there, and there were some amazing Bigfoot field researchers there, very established in the Bigfooting world, that were there that weekend. And I had some of the most profound experiences of my entire life there.
Cool.
And it's not just like supernatural experience. They were just like experiences, period, in my life. Like, it put me on a different trajectory in my life, actually, because there was so much activity there. And the thing about it is, those guys, they took a mind, body, spirit approach to Bigfoot. It wasn't just like a big monkey in the woods. Mm-hmm. It was actually almost like a spiritual being. They'd established that Bigfoot's there. Now what's the next step? Communicating.
Right.
Okay. Communicating, having contact with them now. And what better way to do that than telepathy and mind control? And it just turned out the head of that team is a advanced, amazing remote viewer, formally trained in remote viewing, and the type that like Ingo Swan type of remote viewing.
Yep.
And so after we had these really crazy experiences out in the field when I was there that first weekend, possible alien abduction actually happened. Missing time. I had a recording device on my knee when we were having UFOs flying over our head the second night that I was there. Orbs that were floating around us right in front of us on the side of a mountain. I had an invisible person or a Bigfoot run up behind me and hit my legs out from underneath me, and it kept running past me, but there was nobody there.
Wow.
Lots of weird stuff happened, and a Bigfoot actually peeked his head around a tree right in front of me, but I couldn't see it because I didn't have night vision or FLIR, but the guys down at the bottom of the hill all saw it. And I was just standing there staring at a Bigfoot, and I didn't even know it. So, yeah, lots of wild stuff. But I feel like if there hadn't been that much high strangeness, I probably wouldn't be right here talking with you today about it. I would have gone home and never looked back. I would be like, "Oh, that was cool. I'm going to move on to the next thing."
Yeah, Stuart's asking if you can tell him where that was.
I can just say North Georgia.
There you go.
Yeah, North Georgia. North Georgia mountains have a lot of Bigfoots. So if you're wanting a really good Bigfoot experience, come to the south.
So I'm just going to ask because you know how I think about Bigfoot as kind of along the same lines as you do.
Yeah.
Is that do you think that northern Georgia or just Georgia in general? Do you think northern Georgia though, where you had so many experiences, is a high traffic like a high portal area?
Yes, it is. It actually is. Our team has experienced portals there before, where they clearly walked into another world, another dimension, and then came back out. Yeah. My team has documented at least one portal on video, and we sent two of our teammates into this portal. What we call a portal. It was actually a cube. It looked like a cube that you couldn't see with your own eyes, but you could see it through night vision or thermal and FLIR. So one of our teammates actually turned on her thermal device and filmed the guys walking up to it as they were guided over to this thing that just showed up in the open meadow. Mm. And as they got up to it, they disappeared. Their heat signatures disappeared in an open field. Now, you know something about FLIR, I'm sure.
I know a little. So for those who don't, FLIR is forward-looking infrared. It picks up heat signatures and identifies heat signatures compared based on everything else. If anyone's ever watched one of those cop shows or reality shows, whatever else, and they show the helicopters flying above, and you can identify the people running by this white outline against the black ground or whatever else, that's FLIR. That's what a lot of the jets, a lot of the helicopters, everything else, for search and rescue, everything else, they use something called FLIR, which is forward-looking infrared. I just want to give them a context because you're saying FLIR, and I want them to know what.
I know. I just assume everybody knows. I'm sorry. I've been researching too long.
That's what I'm here for. So
I should probably start explaining that to the audience. Actually, I never even thought about that.
They're like, FLIR. What the heck is? I know
FLIR. Y'all know FLIR. Look at it. No, I'm just kidding.
Baseball card company, but I didn't know they were still in process. So, but yes. Red for heat signature. So yeah.
Oh yeah. It's always fun when you're watching those cop shows and like they're looking for a suspect and they've got the night vision or the FLIR, they've got, the thermals out and they kick over the blue plastic swimming pool and they're always hiding under it, aren't they?
Right. So when they were when I want to see how I want to word this properly. When they were watching with their night visions or their FLIR, and they were watching the people go into the cube. Is it just when they got close, their heat signature blended with the heat signature of the cube, or did they actually disappear into the cube so they couldn't see any heat signature at all?
We believe that they disappeared into it. Okay. Is what we believe. That was what the video shows.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what it shows.
I just didn't know if it mimicked the heat signature to help?
That's a good question, though. That's a really good question. If they just, yeah,
It's its way in and out. If it pops out one side, if you have the infrared and it pops out, you won't see it. You'll miss it exiting or entering.
So, let me explain what happened to them. So they both explained, and I have Bob and Tim were their names. They both have passed away since this happened, both of them.
Oh, okay.
And
that's weird because that wasn't too long ago, though.
It wasn't. They both, right after this happened, they both got really bad health problems. And, when we're out in the field, we do have spikes of radiation.
Right.
And so it was always we kind of assumed, a lot of us on the team, like, we don't blame it on that, but we have our suspicions. Bob had his suspicions too, and he just passed away he got an aggressive form of cancer. And Tim got a heart condition that he didn't even know about until he passed away.
Did it by any chance show any signs of a radiation pattern?
With their health?
Yeah.
Oh, do you mean the object? Or you mean their health?
I meant their health. Like, did it start affecting the blood? Did it start affecting? Were there any radiation burns? Were they? Was it hair loss? Was it anything along those lines that pattern radiation therapy and burns? So
I don't think so. I don't know. No, they didn't get any burns or anything. There was no visible kind of radiation problems that I know of, because they didn't really. Well, I didn't inspect their bodies though. I wasn't that close to them. Okay, I loved them to death, but I was not inspecting them. But it was kind of, we have talked about it as a team, and we actually have had a meeting since then. We had to sit down and really get serious about our research, the future of our research, because other people on the team have had health problems as well that were out there in the field that night. Similar to what happened, but they haven't passed away, but like on a smaller scale, and so we understand that what we're doing out there is very dangerous.
Were they within? So the two that went into the cube, or at least into the grid where the cube was at. I'm gonna identify the grid because I'm assuming that's what it was. That you did a grid pattern out. The ones that went into the cube were the two that passed, unfortunately, and the other ones that are starting or that were showing symptoms. Have you guys identified a perimeter, like where it seems to emanate out to? Were you able to?
Well, I know we know where those people were stationed that night.
Okay.
But see, we always go out there and we take baseline readings. Okay, when we first get to the meadow, the team takes baseline readings of the radiation.
Okay.
Whatever's going on out there, we know what the baseline is in the morning,
right?
As opposed to any other time we go out there at night, usually. So, and we do know where the people were kind of stationed and set up in relation to where the cube was, and so the meadow is not that big,
right?
Okay, and all of the people out there stay around, almost kind of around the tree lines. Okay, right. and they're stationed up around the tree line, looking into the meadow. Because what we do, we don't go out there and we don't provoke stuff. Right. We don't do wood knocks and try to call in Bigfoots and all that kind of stuff. We just go out there and sit and observe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's it. I would wonder though if the pulse of the cube pushes out to a certain range to where it is possibly making people sick. Like if you're sitting further into a tree line, or your tree line is further than theirs, is that possibly something that is affecting it? That because they're closer. So I have a couple questions that come up, or a couple statements. So Rosie states, I wonder, since it went into a different dimension or timeline, that it was to be in their lives, but it was farther in their lives, so their death happened sooner. So was it a projection? Was it a time projection? So it affected them to where they would have passed later on, but that place they jumped into was more advanced later on. So it affected their time they passed at an earlier state compared to what it could have been or what it should have been.
It could have been. Well, okay, so what happened when they walked into this thing? Because they didn't know they were walking into it. They just knew that they were being guided over to go check out this cube.
Yeah, you can't see it. If they're just walking into it, they
Couldn't
can't.
see it.
They don't
And
know.
it was nighttime. It was very dark out there.
Right.
And so they said, Bob, I have an interview that I did with Bob on location near the meadow, but not at the meadow, but near it. And I sat down with him one day, and I got my camera phone out, my camera video thing out, my phone video, my phone camera. That's what I'm trying to say. And yeah, I put it on my little tripod, and I sat down and I said, Bob, can I interview you? It's almost like I felt like this really, everything that he's experienced here in the meadow needs to be documented in an interview, because he didn't do interviews, and I don't blame him. Okay. And this is coming from a girl who does interviews all the time. But he would do interviews with me. And so thank goodness we did that.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't a year later, he had passed away already. And so I sat down and we talked about it, and he said in the video, and Tim had actually passed away, I think it was in 2020 or 2021, he passed away. So Bob said that when they got up to it, they were guided in by the people who located the target, the cube. And so they called over on their CBs, on their Beofungs. They said, go over here. Okay, go to your right, 10 more feet. Okay, stop, turn around. They were guiding them like that. And you could hear it in the video. And they walk up to it. They finally get up to it, and they're like, are we here? Are we there? Are we there yet? And when they get up to it, they're like, yeah, bingo, you got it. You're there. And so they kind of walked a couple more steps, and they disappeared. Well, Bob said that, and Tim had said the same thing, but Bob is on video saying this, that he felt like he had walked through a black velvet curtain. And when he went through that velvet curtain, the temperature changed, the vegetation on the ground changed, the stars disappeared, and they knew that something was off. And so they did an about face, and they walked back to where they came from, and their heat signatures reappeared, and the cube dissipated on the camera. It started dissipating by the time they got over there to it. By the time the camera was turned on to start videoing it, it had already started to dissipate a little bit. It was really bright when they first spotted it. And so as they walked out of it, the cube shrunk down to a tiny cube, and it floated away.
So it almost sounds like it's a multiverse layover.
Mm-hmm. It does. It's almost like the dimensions are lapping right there or something.
Yeah, that's almost what it sounds like. So a couple other ones have popped up. So Jason just makes a statement, said, I was out in some haunted woods, smelled musk, and then had a large log thrown at me. Scared the crap out of me. So, well, yeah, you're in a space.
Yeah, Bigfoots are very territorial.
Yeah,
very.
They are. Stuart wants to know if you go there often. Is that
yes.
one of your locations?
Oh yeah. I go there very often. Yeah, I'm out in the field all the time. We're out in the woods literally every weekend.
Yeah.
So somewhere.
Yeah, and primal states, most people don't have a high enough frequency to spend time in portals without biological damage at this time. Yeah.
That's right. Hey, Kelly. Hey.
So
that's true.
Yeah, and it could just be our physical makeup, our biological makeup, just isn't ready. Even though they step through a multiverse that looks just like, it mimics or looks just like ours, the creation of it is different than what we're used to. So
yes,
so it affects it. It affects us. So and so it's weird that it was just the subtle changes. I mean, I understand just the subtle changes because we've known about just driving through locations and just down a road, and you go to pass a town, and that's a town you've passed numerous times, but all of a sudden you pass through it and it's a little off. It doesn't quite look like the normal time. It looks just like it, but there's something off. The sky's a little different, like you said, or the road's a little different, or the houses skew one way more than the other, but it's still the same place where we've seen it in the past. But you can just tell it's a little off.
Yeah, it's like they turned CERN on or something.
Right. Exactly.
The timeline shifted. I talked about that earlier today about the Mandela effect even could be attributed to CERN.
Yeah, very, very much, very true. So was that investigation specifically for a Bigfoot investigation that this took place, or was it just what was the investigation for that made you guys go, this looks like a good spot to grit it out, find a cube, go find out what it is?
No, we were not expecting that at all. I mean, but we never know what to expect because we just go out into these locations that have extremely high strangeness, and we just, like I said, we observe and we get what we get out there, and we just hope to get any kind of weird activity. There are Bigfoot sightings in that area, a lot of them, and so we're there for the Bigfoots. But see, here's the thing about my teams: we've kind of morphed. Okay, from being big, and I'm on 4 teams now, but my first team that I was on is mostly a Bigfoot field research team.
Right.
We've all been trained in remote viewing too on that team, and it's kind of brought the research to a whole new level.
Right.
So we're not just regular old Bigfoot field researchers that go out there in the woods and knock on trees and do whoops. Yeah. We don't do that. We're out there doing remote viewing stuff and just connecting energetically and psychically and stuff like that. So that's that team. North Georgia Cryptid Researchers. I mean, we're just out there looking for whatever's out there. And a lot of times we'll go, we have several spots that we regularly research. So, but we go do investigations occasionally, but usually if we investigate, it's just a scouting group and it's not the whole team.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have been doing a lot recently, outside of just this, because earlier you mentioned, I kind of want to switch gears because last time we kind of talked more Bigfoot than anything else. And you and I backstage talked briefly about this, but I didn't get the whole story like you just gave me now. So that's fantastic. But I'm kind of interested in what you're doing now with like the Dogman and the Skinwalker and stuff like that. What switched you guys into that mode and just decided maybe we want to do more of this type of investigation, like switch over and try something different and focus on these?
Well, that was just me. That's my decision, and that's me only. And because I do a lot of shows. I get a lot of blind remote viewing targets, which are they're blind, so I don't know what they're going to be, but they end up being skinwalkers and stuff like that, or any kind of cryptid. Dogmen. I'm doing a lot of interviews with people who have encountered dogmen, and I'm fascinated with werewolves and dogmen.
Yeah,
and we're getting reports of them. Well, but at some point last year, a young lady who watches my shows, and somehow we connected. She contacted me saying, "Hey, my husband and I just moved into a home here in Tennessee. I live in Georgia, by the way, but she's up in Tennessee." She said, "We bought this cabin sight unseen. We just bought it. I think they were renting it actually. I think. I don't know. I have no idea. But they moved into this cabin, and it had a cave in the backyard. Literally, her backyard was a gigantic cave.
Really?
And yeah, in Tennessee. And if for people who know Tennessee, you know that Tennessee has a lot of caves.
A lot of caves. Yep.
And so when they got there, she set up and it was on 500 acres of land. Beautiful land. Because I went there.
You're like, I gotta go.
well, she said that she had set up her chicken coop. She had pet chickens, beautiful chickens, beautiful, exotic looking chickens and stuff. And she had them in this chicken coop. But they put here's the thing. They put the chicken coop right by the entrance to the cave.
Oh.
Yeah. So it was basically like an offering to whatever's in that cave, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. It was an offering. It's like, we come bearing gifts. Yeah. So.
So it's funny because someone last week, one of the most recent weeks. Sorry, I mix up my weeks a lot lately. But either last week or the week before, we got on talk about how my team, knowing what I used to do for a living, my team would hear stuff like when we were on paths, and I warned them, do not go off the path, because we would hear little children or women ask for help. They'd be calling for help off the path, and they're like, "Oh my God!" And they're like, "We need to go help." I'm like, "No, you do not. That is not our mission, and that is not our fight. Trust me, you do not want to go off this path. That is not what it seems to be. Do not do this." And I did not know anything, or much, I should say, about that at the time. But my gut feeling was that is bad juju. Do not go help whatever is calling us off. And I identified it as a whatever is calling us, not a whoever is calling us. And it was just a gut feeling that that's what I was feeling. And then now that I've done research and more people are talking about it and I'm starting to hear stories about it, I'm like, ooh. So we were coming across some bad, and we did not hear it just once or twice. We would hear it numerous times in different continents we were hearing it.
Really?
Yeah. So it wasn't just highlighted in North America, which makes me wonder how far spread is it, because I was just like, nope. The little hackles in the back of my neck would stand up.
Yeah. Well, it's actually a worldwide phenomenon. And if you go back and you research like even the Viking berserkers,
Yeah.
right? They would put on the bear skins
Yep.
and take on the form of a wolf. Okay. Now, not necessarily transforming into a wolf, but getting those mannerisms. And I'm not saying those are I'm going to say S-Walker because I've said that word enough. And I know that if you say it too much, it's bad juju too.
That's why you said the word. I say things. Those things.
Yeah, the S-Walkers. Okay, the S-Walkers. But I think that there could be an interesting comparison to the Berserkers and the S-Walkers, because for your audience, if you're not familiar with and I said the word earlier, I'm just going to say S-Walker.
Yeah.
If you look into what they are, it's actually where a human, through magical rituals and practices, black magic, will transform. Basically, they put on the pelt, like the fur of an animal that they want to become, and they a lot of times they say they go into like caves, and a shaman, a dark magician will go, and they have to do heinous acts, horrible acts on people they love, like unaliving, as we say on YouTube, okay, that kind of stuff. But people that they love dearly, they do that to gain all these powers. And I was told by an elder shaman, actually, up in North Carolina, who I spent the weekend with, camping out one weekend, actually. He said that he had turned people into those, and that he could do it for me, but he's like, you don't want me to. You don't want to do it. Because it's very dark, dark.
It's there's nothing positive about it.
No.
Yeah, it is a very dark, evil thing to do. Yeah, I'm looking. I'm sorry. I'm reading some of the comments as well as they come in, because remember, I'm a one-man band. There's interesting comments that are coming in. It looks like it's people that either you have seen recently or dealt with or talked with recently or whatever else. But one of them is what you shared earlier today. So this must have been from your today's show. The Shiva statue at the CERN place. It looks like they are reversing and misusing energy of deities. So, yeah. So for those people who kind of think they have an idea of what the CERN location is, what the Hadron Collider is, what all those different things are, you don't. You think it's for scientific studies and stuff like that. It's not always necessarily that. That's a very good scientific cover that they use for it, trying to identify what happens when two elements clash together, what's going to be the, whatever. But there's so much more they're doing with it than what is being realized in the public eye, unless you really do the research.
Yeah, and there's more large hadron colliders and what they call ion colliders. I don't know if that's the same thing, but ion colliders as well. And I was in East Tennessee this weekend at the Squatch Out, and I was not too far from Oak Ridge Labs, which they actually do work with CERN on a project called ALICE. And the acronym I don't know the last letter, but it's a large ion collider, something with the E. I don't know what the E stands for, but they work directly with CERN on that. And they say that there's one underneath that lab.
Yeah. what was it? I want to say it was like for environment or something like that. I've seen the acronym a few times. It's come across. And
Like it's Energizer or something.
yeah,
Electromagnetic something. I don't know.
and the same person also continues on with there's many ways to connect to some information and understand it. If you resonate with a higher part of the emotional vibrational scale, you aren't going to see the same version of Shiva.
Interesting. Hey, yeah. Andrew. That's Andrew. What's up, Andrew?
Hi, Andrew.
Yeah.
I just wanted to know who I was talking with. So, Stuart is also chiming in. Hi, Stuart. And he says, talk to William about Dogman, and the rise was mostly after the CERN was turned on. So I know that Dogman had been around for ever. So it's interesting if they're just why is it now being seen more with the CERN being turned on? Because the CERN was turned on quite a while ago. For people who don't know about it, it's not new. It was very new way back when. Well, it wasn't as new as when they first made it public. It was even older than that. They just finally decided because there was a leak, people started to find out about it. So they developed this scientific study identifying what it was and what it's supposed to help with and everything else. That's their cover story. But it's been running well before that. So it's interesting. I want to know why the Dogman increase was after that.
Yeah, well, we've had an increase in a lot of cryptid sightings, and I've been doing the field research since 2011. Is when I first started going out in the field and doing the hardcore boots on the ground field research. I never stopped. I've been doing it this whole time. I don't know. They say, I remember like we used to always say, well, the veil has finally thinned.
Right.
The veil is thinned, but it's more than that. It's definitely more than that. I think it could have something to do with CERN. Some people will argue with me about that. I've had discussions about that before. They laugh about it, and I'm like, well, I mean, we have to look at everything from every angle.
Yeah.
Why are there more? I mean, we had the dog-headed men have been around since the beginning of history, the beginning of time, before history was written, probably. I mean, we don't know. Yeah. But on the old world maps, there's whole civilizations of dog-headed people.
Yeah.
They actually have it in the history books. I don't know if it's what history books, but it's documented that King Arthur fought a battle near Edinburgh against an entire army of dog-headed men.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So Stuart says Anubis. He throws in Anubis.
Yep. Ancient Egyptian.
Yep.
God. Right.
Yep. And Rosie says, I believe more people are thinking about them and manifesting it. Which
yep.
Will be. Kathy, she's asking who is behind CERN. To the vast majority of people, it is known that the governments in a scientific study have all come together to create the Hadron Collider, or the Ionic Collider, as you call it, that was built in CERN, Switzerland. That's where it's actually at, is out in Switzerland. The first one that was designated was built out there. It is huge. But it was used for identifying certain matter particles and to see if they can help move us forward, like in time jumping or in transportation or teleportation or stuff like that. So they're trying to see, and it's supposed to be used for studies for science and health and everything else, which is sensitive to the public. Now, if that's what it's really,
but they already had all that, because we have projects like Project Pegasus and the Montauk Project, right? And all these other projects that have been going on for decades, right?
Right, exactly. So we have to go back to the S word. Wendy is asking, hi, Wendy. And is there a cord you would need to cut if someone has tried to use yourself to become one of those? My mother and aunt tried to get me to unilive myself to gain power through it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's all black magic and dark magic. It has ties to that. So I'm assuming, I'm sure there's a way to cut the cords of it. And it's all about intention, right?
I will tell you the person to contact for this, Wendy, is actually in this talking group right now, and his name is William Nighthawk.
Yeah.
William, I'm throwing your name under the bus, but I know it's in good intention, so don't beat me up. William Nighthawk has dealt with the S-Walkers, has fought the S-Walkers, knows how to deal with them directly, has helped others deal with them directly, and a lot of other negative beings. So he is your best source of information if you want an answer to this. I myself can't answer this truly and fully without having to do research. And guess what? My research would literally be William Nighthawk. So I would recommend reaching out to him. Hopefully you're all right with that, William, but I know you're okay with helping others. So there you go.
I've consulted with William a couple of times before I go on my investigations, because when I actually was headed to that S-Walker cave, I never told you the story about the S-Walker cave, by the way.
No,
it was pretty creepy, but I consulted with him for some advice on what to do because I had never encountered the S-Walkers before, and can't tell you exactly everything that I was told, but I can say that it was very similar to hunting vampires.
Yeah, really.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of cool. So I'm kind of tagging a couple of these questions as we go through. But Wendy does say, definitely be interested in talking with him if he's open to it. Thank you. Rosie is asking, is Dogman like Bigfoot on another dimension?
They can be. They can be. I mean, I'm dealing mostly with the 3D with these creatures now, but I also have there's another X factor to the cryptids. We call it the X factor on my team. There's something supernatural about them, but there's also something supernatural about humans.
So
okay?
Here's my thought. So I agree with you to an extent, and I think it's because we have to identify the difference between the cryptids that we believe are multidimensional or other dimensional or otherworldly versus things like elementals, which we know are here, but they're of an environmental state. And that's why they're here, but they're as old as time. So people understand that elementals are not cryptids. They are identified as something totally different. So a lot of people may mix things up with other things. And so like when they're asking, is a dogman like Bigfoot? Well, it depends. Is your belief of a dogman that it comes from an elemental side or from an environmental side? Or does it come from a multidimensional side? And that's an argument that is out there. I don't want to say an argument, but that's a discussion that is out there. So when you mentioned that there is a 3D aspect to Dogman, as well as there's another aspect, the X factor. It just depends on what your belief is, or where you're seeing them at, or what you're seeing them as. Like even Kelly, I just saw her comment. She says the forest people and Dogman where I live are multidimensional.
Yep.
So it just really depends on where you're at and what you think they are.
That's right. I've always said that I believe that Bigfoot could be interdimensional.
I believe that.
It's only because of my experience that I've had out in the field.
Yeah.
And not everybody, and I don't really care if people disagree with me. I have my opinion because I have experience with it.
Right.
It's not like I just thought it and I think it. I've actually lived it. Okay.
Right.
I've seen this. I've seen them. They'll disappear right in front of your eyes. Track lines will disappear. You'll be following a track line, all of a sudden they just disappear as if they just popped into a portal or got taken up into the sky or something. And of course, there's always debunkers. They're like, well, they can walk backwards in their tracks perfectly, all that stuff. And maybe they can. That's great.
But if I saw it, and I was following its tracks because I just saw it, it's not going to walk back by me again.
That's right.
So, and I believe
that's right.
Because that goes back to when you were younger and you asked those questions. Why haven't I found the bodies? Why haven't I found the bones? Why haven't I seen the poop? Guess what? That's because when they travel through, they don't die here. And if they do, I believe that something comes up and takes them back to their dimension, to where they came from, for burial rites and everything else, just like a lot of places have. I think that's why we haven't fully found solid concrete, and I mean that for the everyday standard tree knocker, howler type of Bigfoot person, when they haven't found the solid evidence they're looking for, because they're looking for physical evidence of this world, and I just don't think it's there. So
Well, and also we got to take into consideration portals and Earth's natural portals that are here. And I do believe that they are accessing our natural portals that we have that
Yeah,
show up during solar flares or whenever. They know when where the portals are going to be and when they open and when they close. I don't know how it works, but
right,
I believe that they have access to those.
right. I tie it to the same thing as we know we have Nazca lines, but we don't know what they're for. But they have their own system of what they know and what things are for because they haven't lost that knowledge. So
Yeah.
they still have that knowledge, so it still gains. Melody states that they have a dogman in Hawaii. Um, is that the Kaupe? I think that's right. Kaupe. She'll tell me if I'm wrong because they'll make fun of me if I don't say the Hawaiian words correctly. But they have dogmen out there as well. And I'm going back to where Andy was. Andy's like, yeah, the perception of an ether element is different from years prior to 2024. And if solar storms were to clear as it is happening, we might also be experiencing clearer interactions with it. I think that was tied back into the Dogman method, but because it's been a while since that comment came up. But I think it works for the same thing for now. If we're still even talking about Bigfoot or whatever else. So I have a belief. I'm just curious about your take on this. I'm asking more of an expert than what I am because I am not in any way, shape, or form. So we identify things like Bigfoot and skunk ape and Yeti and Sasquatch. And my belief is that we are watching different species that are closely related in family, but they're not all the same thing. I think there's a reason why Yeti has the reputation of having such a violent, vicious temper, whereas Bigfoot is seen as more of a docile, not unless confronted, violent type thing. I think it's because they're two different species. They just fall under the same type of genus family. Is that a possibility?
Oh yeah. We typically have four types of Bigfoot. There's typically four. There's probably a whole lot more, but we categorize them by type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4. Type 1 would be like your patty type, like the one from the Patterson Gimlin film. Type 2 looks more kind of gorilla-like or monkey-like. Type 3 would be the more violent type of Bigfoots with a snouted nose, we call them Gugway or Genosquas. And then type 4 would be your wildmen that look much more human-like, kind of like a Neanderthal human. So we have those, but then there's also, there's got to be like different races. It's kind of like humans, right?
Yeah.
We're all different. It depends on the region. Okay, because like down here in the South, we got skunk apes.
Right.
Up in the Pacific Northwest, we have gigantic, huge Bigfoot. So, and the skunk apes are not that big.
Right.
Okay, they're like 6 foot, 7 foot for the most part. 6 feet, 7 feet tall. Excuse me, my southern accent comes out sometimes.
That's all right.
Yeah, my dialect.
We understand you, but yeah, because that's always been my thought process is that when I relate it back to how people do military mind here. Everyone always calls a shoulder launched weapon as a man pad, or or like a stinger. Like everyone calls any kind of shoulder launched missile a stinger. But
I want one of those. Where do I get one?
But there's like the SA6, the SA6, or the SA7, the SA9, the SA12, and they all have different names. But because they all have an origination of a name, they all think they're the same thing. And I'm like, absolutely not. And I think that's what's kind of happened because everyone understood Bigfoot. They all categorized him as the same thing, even though they are different genus family pools. So I try to tell people that and explain that to them, but I really wanted to make sure I wasn't explaining anything wrong. So I'm glad I got confirmation from you that what's rattling around in here is actually making sense sometimes. Jessica is, I'm sorry. That's funny because I just read your name on this. Fabian's asking, do you have a favorite cryptid and why is it your preference?
Oh man. Well, of course my favorite is Bigfoot. Okay. And a lot of people say Bigfoot's not even a cryptid because A cryptid is just an animal that's not been identified by science, basically, but they are. And I believe that our government knows all about them. Okay. There's even been a map that I've looked at and someone sent to me. I've talked about it on my show. There's a topographical, some kind of map that the U.S. Air Force put out where they classified Sasquatch as a dangerous animal. To answer the question, it's Bigfoot, hands down, if you consider them a cryptid.
Yeah.
And it's my favorite just because that's what I've always been fascinated by them. I mean, I like all the cryptids. Just like I'm the kind of girl that likes everything. Okay, I just like everything. But I'm fascinated with lake monsters and sea cryptids.
Yeah.
As well. I like those. Of course, the Fae and the Kobold, as we call them, the little people. I'm really into looking into that. And weird cryptids like the Kushtaka out of Alaska and parts of Canada.
Yeah.
It's the Otter Man. That's a cool one.
So, and all right, I'm gonna go. I'm about to have a squirrel moment. Everybody, get ready for this. So we talk about all these different cryptids. I believe that there is a cryptid that used to actually exist, but it has decided it no longer wants to be part of our world. For all you Little Mermaid fans out there, it does not want to be part of our world. I believe that dragons were or are a cryptid from somewhere else that have just decided that we are not worth the time, the effort to come back to Earth to deal with us.
Or they could have also been eradicated in some way.
True.
At some point. I actually encountered potentially a petrified dragon about a month ago in the woods of Alabama.
Huh. How'd that go? You gotta bring that conversation up. How'd that go? How did that go? So,
that was horrible. I wasn't expecting to see a dragon that day at all. I had met up. Okay, so after we did the S. Walker Cave investigation up in Tennessee, we did that last year. There had been like Dogman and Bigfoots and all this other stuff on the property too. So that's a whole other story. If you guys are interested in that, I have several shows on my channel about that cave investigation, which are pretty cool. Right down here on the ticker. Okay.
Everything that's been running for the past 53 minutes. Yeah, go out to there.
Yes. Okay. So those guys, the same guys they're called Cryptid Warfare Operators. And we had a really good time. Those guys a lot of them are former military, Marines and Army, and now they're like bounty hunters and stuff. And just a really cool group of dudes, right? And they're very active in the boots on the ground research, and they're cavers. They love going into caves and doing wild stuff. Very tactical, let's just say. And I had a really good time with them, and they invited me to do some more investigating with them. And so we went. One of the guys on that team had gone hiking into the woods in Alabama with his dad and his nephew. His nephew was about to go to boot camp for the Marines. And so I don't know if they were celebrating or they were just doing one last, camp out before he went. And they hiked in about 5 miles, I think they said, into the woods. Well, I don't know just what they said because I actually hiked it myself. Okay. But it was a long way. But they had gone out there a couple months ago, I guess, 2 or 3 months ago. And they weren't expecting to have cryptid activity, but one of the guys that went had gone with us to that S. Walker Cave investigation. He's part of Cryptid Warfare. And they got out there and they said around 11 o'clock that night, 11 or 12 o'clock, all hell broke loose out in the woods. And they were miles from their vehicle. There was no getting out of there easily, that's for sure. But they felt like they were surrounded by what they believed to be potential dogmen that night. Now, the sports is actually known for dogman sightings. It's also known for aggressive Bigfoots. And large groups of Bigfoots, like families of Bigfoots, have been spotted out there. Well documented, by the way, right. Bigfoot families. And so the guys stayed up all night, pretty much. I believe they said that they sat back to back with their firearms. because they didn't know if they were going to make it out alive that night. They
Yeah.
stayed up till the sun came up. They were harassed and, threatened pretty much all night by whatever it was, but they weren't heavily armed. Let's just say they had something to protect themselves, but it wouldn't have been enough if whatever that was stalking them and harassing them had actually attacked them. It would have ended. There's no telling how it would have ended, actually.
Yeah. That's interesting.
But yes, well, so that has to do with the dragon. Okay. So they were there. We decided the whole team was going to go out there, or five. Well, there's just five of us. We're going to go out there. Go with the gentleman and his dad, and three more of us. We met up there one day. I got the coordinates. We headed up, and we were unloading our cars. We were planning to hike in and camp out at the exact location where he stayed, where they had that encounter. So we were getting our gear out of our vehicles and kind of getting ready, and it was so hot. It was so hot that day. It was like 120 degrees outside. And so I was just mentally getting prepared for that, okay, for the hike,
right,
and everything. And so as we're getting our stuff out, this man hikes out of the woods off a trail, and he's carrying a stone, like a big stone. It was like a square kind of, a big piece of smooth stone, a rock. And I heard him telling the guys, like, "Hey, y'all familiar with dragons?" And the guys were not. They were like, "Yeah, we know dragons," but they weren't really, paying attention to it. And I was like, "Hey, I know about dragons," because I saw he had something in his hand, and I thought, well, maybe he's going to talk about petrified dragons,
right?
Because I'm really into petrified giants, and that's a topic that I'm really interested in. And so he walked over to me, and he was holding that stone. He said, "You know about petrified giants, right?" I said, "Yeah." He's like, "Are you familiar with Mud Fossil University?" I was like, "Of course. I love that channel." And so he holds up this rock, and he has a brush in his hand. And obviously this brush has been used a lot. It was like a plastic bristled brush that like an archaeologist or somebody would use to, like, brush stuff off of rocks. Okay. And so he had this in his hand, and he said, "Well, this is the wing of a dragon. This is part of this wing." He said, "There's a dragon right here on this trail. When you hike in, so far," he's kind of explaining to us where it was. He said he'd been coming there for a while. His wife will hike the trails, and he will go to this dragon and clear off the brush off of it and clean it up. And he had been doing that for a while. And he had taken a little piece of the wing. He said that he was actually planning to try to get an analysis of it to find out if there was anything to it, because he's like, you can clearly see the dragon. He was like, you're going to hike right over its wing. The trail goes right through its wing. And so the gentleman actually, after we got all of our stuff, he met us at the dragon. He said, "I'm going to go on down there. I'll meet y'all there, so you won't miss it."
Yeah.
Well, we wouldn't have missed it if we had gone over it. I mean, it was obvious.
Yeah.
It looked like a full dragon. The head, the body, and the head and the body were actually the hill. So its body made up that land mass right there. That was the hill, was the dragon.
Yeah.
So it's easy to miss these things, Tom. It's so easy. I mean, what else has been hiding in plain sight?
Right.
This whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so there's someone who's in here. Her name is Melody Chang. She's in the conversation right now. And she went with me. She actually showed me around. Her and a couple other people showed me when I went over to Hawaii. And we went to this one location, and the first thing I saw was a sleeping giant. You could easily see him, and he covered 4 mountain ranges up there. And you can tell that he was laying sideways, but you can perfectly make out the legs where it came off, the body, and then where the head was. And that was my very first thing. I looked up, and at first I kind of looked at the mountains. I'm like, there's something about these mountains. And then I kind of did a step back and looked at the whole thing, and I was like, holy crap, that whole thing looks like a sleeping giant. It looks like a sleeping man. And she's like, oh, you can see that. I was like, yeah, it's right there. I mean, if you don't pay attention to it, if you're just looking at the trees and not the entire forest, you're going to miss it, So that's I think there's more stuff out there like that, because if you're just walking over that path, but you're not looking for the size of that dragon, you're going to miss that dragon. You're just going to simply think you're on a path.
But when you walk up behind it, you can clearly see its tail.
Yeah.
You can see its back. When you keep walking past it, you can see that it's a wing. I mean, I took pictures of it, and there was so much vegetation on it and around it that it was hard to make it out in the pictures. But when you're there in person, you can 100% see it, and it's so obvious.
Yeah.
Once you know what you're looking at, but you have to know what you're looking at. If he had not pointed that out to us, I would have just thought, man, this is a really odd rock formation.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what it is sometimes. Sometimes you're just not, like I said, that saying is true for, you can't see the forest through the trees. And that's what a lot of it is. You're not looking for what you're supposed to be looking for, or you just don't know it's there. So if that gentleman had never came through and said, hey, do you know about dragons, or, whatever else, petrified dragons, you would have been like, you would have walked by it probably 100 times and never known about it.
No, we would have stepped right on it. Yeah. And I mean, imagine me going into a dogman hunt investigation, and the first thing we do when we get there, we see a dragon.
Yeah.
I was like, this is magical. This is so wild. I was like, this is going to be a really good trip.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really good expedition here. Yeah.
Ajang, our watcher from Indonesia, which is why you hear me do the time frames, is asking, if Bigfoot is supernatural like human means they are spirits who may have lived and died in the past. Very well could have been.
Well, I started posing the question as to if Bigfoots can be ghosts. Okay. Because when we were at the SCHOOLBOOK investigation up in Tennessee, there was a point to where Farah, who lived on that property, I had taken some ghost hunting equipment there. I always take my ghost hunting equipment. And she had some as well, to any kind of investigation, just to have it, K2 meters, REM pods, recording devices, and things like that. And she had an SLS camera that actually picks up, if there's like a ghost there, it shows up in the form of a stick figure.
It picks up the shape. Yep.
Yes. And so we're doing a little nighttime investigation outside the cave, right outside the cave, but looking like sitting in the mount, like the opening of the cave. And we put the REM pod out there, we really don't know what the REM pod detects other than a shift in the environment around it. Like if something comes close to it, it'll beep.
Right.
If something comes close to the antenna, it beeps.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we have that sitting out, and she has her SLS camera out. We're picking up voices on the recording devices and some other devices that she had. They were picking up words. We were kind of having conversations. I had my dowsing rods there too.
Yep.
We were picking up on a lot of different energies there. But at some point in the night, a gigantic stick figure came jumping. I'm talking about like blasted out of the side of that cave. There was a cavern on the side up high. Mm-hmm. And it didn't just crawl out, it just like jumped out, like head first.
Yeah.
And as it jumped out at us, it was literally a giant. And there were two little ones, I'm going to say about this big, with it, that climbed down the wall beside it.
Huh.
And it sat there and it was kind of like communicating with us, kind of like letting us know that it saw us. We knew it was there. And, one of the little ones was dancing in circles around my REM pod. It jumped on the antenna and started dancing around it, and the REM pod was going crazy. It was beeping like mad. But we had to start questioning, like, what was that? Why was there a giant? Why was there a giant ghost or whatever that was? Something in another dimension, another plane.
Right.
Could it have been a Bigfoot? And or was it a giant? We had giants there, and this land actually belonged to the Choctaw indigenous people there. And the story goes that a shaman came in, a medicine man had to come in, and he banished multiple S-walkers into this cave because there were a whole bunch of them that had become a nuisance. They were all over that area right there. He banished them and sealed them into that cave. Yeah. And Farah and her husband lived with that cave entrance 30 feet from their back door.
Yeah. Wow. That is crazy. Yeah. That's what Andy says. Both you and Farah shared some really interesting data from that place. Yeah. I have no doubt that a lot of these spirit stuff we pick up with EMF and all the other stuff is not simply human. And the reason why I say that is because there's been video, there's been all this other stuff of people who see their pets who have passed. or have seen other things that have passed. So we know that they're in a spiritual form, or some other form, but some form of energy, whether it's it's a past energy, whatever else. But there's something. So I don't doubt that there's other things that we're going to pick up on our EMFs or our K2 meters or the SLS or anything else, because it's what it was, and that's what we're picking up is that energy from it, whether it be intelligent. Sometimes it can be residual, but we're still going to pick up some of it simply because it's still that imprint there. So, and Primal saying in spherical time, unlike linear time, all is present, right? So it's always there in that sphere, like you're talking about. It doesn't have a point to point, A to B, start and end. So it's pretty interesting. But yeah, I mean, there's so many things that you are touching that so many people have questions on, type of things, because it's really cool because I've heard a lot of the questions. What is a dogman? What is an S-Walker? What is, our Bigfoot Yeti the same thing, type of thing, all these different ones. In fact, Sylvia said earlier, Bigfoot and Yeti are different, or maybe Bigfoot somehow migrated to a different region. I believe they're two different species, like we talked about earlier, just from the same genus family. But you're touching on all of it. Now, we really haven't talked too much specifically on the S-Walker and the Dogman. Do you want to do that?
Yeah, we can.
All right.
Of course. Yeah. Well, I mean, do you want to talk about my experiences, or do you want to talk about what they are? You want to talk about what they are?
Let's talk about both. I mean, you have
Okay.
give an explanation of what they are, and then your experiences with them and how that ties together.
Okay. So, an S-Walker. Now, I said the word earlier tonight, so I have been warned and told not to say that word, what they're called, over and over again by people, especially in my chat. So out of respect, I only say it once or twice. And then I get reminded, don't say it again.
Yeah.
Because they say that you'll start conjuring these things into your world. They'll manifest it. So an S-Walker, let's just say, is from Native American legend, but it's not just legend. I've actually had two experiences where one of them, I didn't mean to run into one, but I potentially did. The second time I went looking for them. Okay, a bunch of them in that cave. I don't recommend anybody do this. Do not do what I do, y'all. Okay? Don't do it. But when I was up in North Carolina in Cherokee, I was hanging out with a medicine man, the elders of the Cherokee actually, and we were camping out, and something did sneak up on our base camp, and Will stood up and started yelling at it in an ancient dialect of Cherokee that no one speaks anymore at all, and he was commanding that something leave, and so that was my experience with that. He said that was actually someone that had turned into the S-Walker. Now, what an S-Walker is, which actually, if he turned me into a S-Walker, let's just say, that means that he would practice the dark arts. Mm-hmm. Okay, and so in order to become an S-Walker, it does require some form of magical practices, rituals. Some say that you go into a cave, the people go into a cave and they perform the rituals in there, sometimes with other people who are also turning into these S-Walkers. But they take the pelt of an animal. I don't know if they have to unalive that animal themselves. I'm not sure. They do have to take the lives of people that they love, spouses, parents, children, siblings, cousins, whatever. I don't know. It's really dark.
Right.
But when they do that, I don't know if they utilize the blood. A lot of this, what I'm learning these days, what's really dark is a lot of these, like we talk about werewolves a lot on my show, and conjuring things, conjuring cryptids, and talk about the blood and how blood is required for a lot of this. And even in some of these haunted locations, I've remote viewed a location And I kept hearing, the land requires blood. The land requires blood. I kept hearing that. And that was a place where two men were unalived brutally, and their dogs too. And they were known Satanists, friends with Anton LaVey. The place where their home is now, it's in Northwest Georgia, called Corpsewood Manor. Anton LaVey actually told them where to put their home, like the exact location, right beside Chickamauga Battlefield, right down the road from there, where 34,000 men died over a 3-day period back during the Civil War.
Yep.
So if you don't think, and when I went there to go investigate with my team a long time ago, like 12 years ago, there was blood everywhere. Blood splatter everywhere. We hoped it was just like a chicken or something. You could tell that there had been rituals being done there. Turned out it was human blood.
Mm-hmm.
And it was from an accident. We found out later what happened because someone contacted us to tell us it was her son that had been cutting wood for a fire because he and his friends were up there to try to get scared. And, they were locals. And, you're a teenager, you go and you do dumb stuff, And they went up there, and he went.
Teenagers, I still do. So I still do some stuff. So
me too. But he went to go chop some wood to make a fire, and the axe his hatchet slipped and cut his artery in his thigh. And so he barely survived. We could tell when we got there that it looked like a herd of elephants had run through the woods fast to get out of there. So we figured somebody got spooked. There was also blood everywhere.
Yeah.
So that's a place that I don't really care to go back to. I love the area, but it's just very dark.
Yeah.
But the land requires blood.
It does.
And if you have a knife out, if you have a hatchet, if you have a gun, you have whatever, you have it on you, there's a chance that you could have an accident, a supernatural disaster.
Right.
Because that land requires blood.
Yeah.
And I believe that. So I do believe that to turn into an S-Walker, it does require blood as well.
Yeah.
It's just part of the magic.
So, and I know a little bit about this, a little more than I let on. So I know quite a bit about this. But it's a practiced, it's basically a sacrifice that you have to make in order to gain your powers and your abilities as an S-Walker. It demands it. It's not a request. It's a demand. And it's not something that is ever taken lightly. It is very much a dark ritual that has to happen. Otherwise, it can go very wrong, and you can actually, those that are trying to make that move from human to S-Walker can literally just die trying to make that process happen if they don't fulfill the requirements needed to make that happen. So it is something that there's no going halfway through it and going, you know what? Maybe I don't want to do this. There is none. Once you have made your first, once you have spilled your first blood, you are past the point of return. You've already made that exception, and there's only two ways out at that point, and that is either to become an S-Walker at that point or to die. There's no middle ground. So,
I mean, it's a commitment.
Yeah,
it's not one I would ever make.
Commitment. Good way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they get superhuman abilities, and it's. I've been told you could walk through walls, is what I was told.
Yeah, they have great strength. They have great abilities. They pick up a lot of the abilities of whatever animal they have decided to take on. But they're always seen. Their animal form is not pure. There's always some form of deformation with the animal form they take.
Oh yeah, I've saw. Okay, so I had a creature on a trail camera that was tasked to me as a blind remote viewing target. Mm-hmm. And it was really weird. It looked like a dog, but it had kind of a human face on a trail cam. And it was supposed to be out of Mexico. Mm-hmm. Some people said it was from Canada or somewhere, but I think it was from Mexico, actually. And the locals said that this was actually a witch. It was a warlock, a man who transformed into a dog. Okay. It was weird. Okay, it was really weird.
Right. Yeah.
So if you see a dog with a human face, okay, I know some of us feel bad for dogs and cats to have human-like faces because they're going to be chastised from here on out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah.
Still love your pets, y'all. They're not necessarily a skinwalker. A S-walker. Okay. If they're wanting a treat from you and they're still loving on you, they're probably not one. Okay.
Right. So Rosie states that I heard that peyote is used in this process. Yes, but it's not necessary. Peyote is supposed to take them to that state beyond their state they're in now, basically it helps with the pain of doing what they're doing, but it also takes them to basically another realm to where they are joining themselves with what they're trying to become. But people who are just starting off evil and they just want this ability, they do not need the peyote to make that jump. It's a lot of times it's for those who are committed to it, but way, way, way deep down inside of their tiny, tiny, dark, dark heart, they have that little bit of light, and this helps push them over the edge. So, so that's just where the peyote comes in to help with that assistance. So yes, but yeah, and that's interesting because that's what I believe that we heard on the trail when I told you about when we walked, when my team was on those trails and we heard the helps. We believe that's what some of them were them trying to guide us off the trail so they could sacrifice us, so they can continue to kill us. So, and that was something that I can't tell specifically, but I can tell you that a lot of it happened when we were in South America. And South America has some very different, well, I don't want to say overly different, but some different beliefs about how the transformation happens. And a lot of it ties in more with a voodoo type belief than it does the Native American belief. So yeah, it's interesting to go to different parts of the world to understand how they see S-walkers, and they call them different things sometimes or whatever else. But when you hear the stories, you're like, oh, I know what that is. And it's the same way. So
that's fascinating. You can find videos all over the internet and stuff of people who have their phones out and they're, exploring the woods, and then they hear somebody, like a voice coming out of a hole in the ground.
Yeah.
Help.
Yep. And it's normally female or a child.
Yeah. Well, there's not one. There's a guy that's on his horse, riding his horse around his ranch, and you can hear somebody say, "Help!"
Yep, we've seen that one. We also pulled up another one, and it was a person on his he's riding trails on his mountain bike, and he hears it when he stops, and he's like, "Nope," and you just see him turn around and book out. Nope, not doing it. And it's very weird because he went in, like he did the trail going one direction, and it was clear, but when he was trying to come out, all of a sudden an entire tree is falling across, and when he has to stop for the tree, that's when you start hearing the helps. And he just went up and over it. He's like, "Oh, I'm in a dirt bike. I'm just going straight up and over the street." And he just kept on. I'm out. So, yeah,
that was a smart thing to do.
It's like, I don't know, but I'm not going off the road. So, yeah.
I mean, that's pretty terrifying. I mean, I'm out in the woods a lot. I have actually heard a woman's voice in the woods before.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, Tom, it was my voice.
Oh, really? So you had a mimic?
I'm not sure, because you know what she said? Time travel.
Really?
Yeah. And I didn't realize it, because you never ever expect to hear your own voice.
Right.
Ever.
Yeah.
And when that happened, it was out in the woods. We were hiking into the meadow, one of the places that we research. Mm-hmm. And I just heard a woman's voice yell, like, hollered at me. She kind of screamed. It was like, time travel. And it sounded exactly like that. I've said it the same every time I ever say it. It's like, time travel. Because that's exactly what I heard. And as I'm going over this in my head over and over again for like a week or more, maybe 2 weeks, I couldn't get it out of my head. And I would say it out loud like she did. And then I started realizing, I was like, wait a second, that was my voice. That was my voice.
You're like, hold on a second.
I heard that woman's voice was my voice because I had the inflections right and everything. I was like, that was my voice. But the realization that I had, it was so profound to realize that was me.
Wow.
That it actually was like, it was kind of scary, but it was almost like emotional. Like, okay, well, am I a time traveler?
And which one are you? Are you the one behind or are you the one forward?
Oh no, don't make me think about that now too. Well, yeah, we say that the dimensions overlap out there, right?
Oh,
It's a place like Skinwalker Ranch.
yeah.
Where there's just a weird dimensional overlap. That's where the cube was.
Yep. Yeah, that's but there are, and I always talk about, I've mentioned a few times where we have dimensional layovers that are forward or backwards. And I explain this to people by what a lot of people call hoaxes, because you see in a newspaper somewhere where it shows a picture back from the 1950s, but it shows a guy standing there holding a cell phone.
Yeah.
But then you never see it again. So what happened? Is that something that took place in that timeline forward, and that person just happened to be standing in that one spot? The picture was taken at the most perfect time ever, or what was it? Was it a hoax? But so there's a lot of people will look at stuff and go, well, that's just a hoax. But how do you know? I mean, some of them you can tell that you can pick apart the pictures, and you can pick apart the pixels and tell these pixels are here, but these overlap in a different form. That's my nerdy side coming out. Sorry, everybody.
You're such a nerd.
I really am. But there's some you look at the images and you try to do that and everything else, and there's no flaw. And you're like, how did that happen? How did they do that? We don't have the technology right now to do that. So it's interesting to see that could happen. So that makes me wonder, you hearing your voice, were you past, or were you forward, or are you in a parallel right at the same time?
Or was I remote viewing myself?
True. Yeah.
Because I do what's called a deep mind probe on whenever I pick up a person in the environment when I'm remote viewing. I do a deep mind probe, and so it would make sense that I would remote view myself at some point. I haven't yet, but that I do at some point, and I say time travel, or I put that into my head, because you can't do that. You can't put stuff into people's heads when you're remote viewing.
Right.
You can ask them questions, right? Yeah. And here's the thing. I was with Tim, one of the guys who has passed away. He was a very good friend of mine. I was with him and his daughter. We were hiking in together into the woods, and they didn't hear it. It was only me that heard it. So it would actually make sense that would probably be me remote viewing myself and remote viewing us, because that was the last time Tim ever went out into the field with us. He passed away shortly after that within a couple of weeks.
So even if you were remote viewing yourself, what side of the remote view were you on?
True. Oh my gosh. You're making my brain hurt tonight. Okay. I'm just kidding.
That's why you love coming on my show, don't
No,
you?
but that's true. No, I love it because it puts a whole new perspective on it. That's what we need to do. That's what this world needs right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's no one answer to that.
Right.
I don't know. Could be.
And Jackie is Jackie. Hi, Jackie. Jackie made a statement saying there's a story out of Colorado right now, an SOS light signal coming out of the mountains. Crews keep looking for someone but can't find them. So that's, if they can identify where the light signal is coming from, but when they get there, there's nothing. What is that? Is that an overlap? Is that
Well, it could be somebody stuck in a portal or something too. Like Stranger Things. You watch that show Stranger Things.
Absolutely.
They got the upside down world and
yeah. Yep. Yeah.
That.
Andy says, I'm so glad you told me his name, so I have to keep saying.
Yeah, Andrew.
Yeah, Andrew. A ripple effect, perhaps, mentioning it in an early age, and then it happening, and then mentioning it constantly, just a possibility. So he's talking about you hearing you say time travel. So.
Yeah. I never studied time travel too much when I was a kid. But I knew there was something different about me. Okay, but the possibilities are just kind of endless though when it comes to that, because I do know people that claim to have made time travel technology, and people who have been part of the Montauk programs,
Yeah.
and even Project Pegasus.
I was gonna say,
I know someone personally who was part of all the, a couple of those programs.
yep. Yeah. Kelly's asking. Kelly's saying for you to remote view Tim's timelines.
Yes, that is a possibility there. Yeah, I miss Tim. That was one of my best friends.
Yeah.
And he, he actually did a lot for our research. You know, it's interesting. He actually was a physicist.
Oh.
And he had an interesting background. I won't get into it, but I started to think. Do what?
But he brought a lot to the table.
He did. Well, and if you look at some of those missing 411 cases,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times they are scientists that go missing and physicists as well. So, was he targeted?
Good
Could
question.
be.
Yep. Did he know too much? Yeah. So
probably. We all know too much over here. Probably.
She says. So Kelly also says, "Have Tim take you in the cube."
Oh yeah.
See?
Well, we still go. We're very active in our research out there still, and we've done some cutting edge stuff that I'm not going to get into tonight. But we've done some stuff, and to where it's like we're talking about. There's no such thing as time, really. But even though Bob and Tim are not here, what if we did something in the future that might have helped to create that portal back then? And it's just weird. We do stuff like that when we're out there. Okay, like we're experimenting with time and space and stuff out there.
So you said that you still take all of your paranormal equipment out there. And here's a question I asked before: what happens if what we're talking to is actually a future spirit, one from a future timeline that we're seeing and that we're speaking with, or that we're
absolutely
that just hasn't happened in our timeline yet?
Yeah.
In another timeline.
I mean, it could be ourselves. I mean, I heard my own voice out there scream time travel. I mean, why wouldn't those voices be us in the past or the future too?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if they know enough about us, why wouldn't it be? So,
Yeah. I mean, and it's like those voices that you get on the ghost boxes when you're talking to it. I don't particularly like those because you just don't know who you're talking to. Right. And there's a lot of trickster spirits out there.
There are.
And I mean, if some people can label it demonic or whatever you want to label it as, it's just a voice to me. Right. And it may not be Aunt Edna.
Right. Okay. Right. And that's something I don't know if you and I had this conversation before, but that's something I have to watch out for, because not only do I hear paranormal spirit in this realm, but I now start talking to them in different realms. They talk to me and it feels different. When they talk to me here, they talk to me and my head gets all the feelings. But when they talk to me in another location, like another realm or another universe, whatever you want to call it, another dimension, it comes across my chest or across my shoulders. So I can feel it, but they're still talking to me the same way as they do in this 3D realm. So it's very interesting for me to have those conversations with them when they're in different realms, because they can come through just like in a 3D realm for me to understand them. So that makes me wonder what I'm talking to. And is something reaching out from another dimension? Am I looking at or am I talking to a cryptid, what we would call a cryptid? Something with an intelligence that wants to communicate. Don't know. So thanks, Rosie. Andrew's saying, from what I understand, if there was a bleed through a distant future into the past, any kind of information would possibly be misunderstood if there's no additional context. Could be. I mean, it's true. If you don't know what comes from the future to the past, and all we get is just a sentence or anything, how do we know what it's trying to explain to us? Are we misunderstanding it just as people send texts with no grammar? And we don't know if they're trying to be funny or if they're trying to be negative. It's just something that they write out. We can misunderstand it. It could possibly fall along the same guidelines. So, okay. So, we've been going for about an hour and a half. So, I'm going to say that let's call it for now.
We can talk all night. We really can. Okay.
That's what I'm saying. Let's call it now. And the plan will be to have you come on again in the future, if you're okay with that.
Of course.
Absolutely. So I know people are like, oh, but oh, and Andrew says, yes, that's one way to put it into in some words. Thank you. But I think that's a good stopping point. We've covered quite a bit in one conversation. People will be happy. We had see, and there goes B-Man. Oh, see.
Hey, B-Man.
But we covered a lot. We can cover so much more, but I know some people have night times, families to take care of, all that wonderful stuff. Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate it. It was great meeting you too. I'm glad you enjoyed the show. Everybody down below, as you can see along the scroller, has been everything that Jessica, the Cryptid Huntress, you can find her. It's going to come back again. Don't worry, it's been looping all night. You can find her directly through her site, or you're going to be able to find her through her YouTube site. If for some reason you don't write this down and you're too lazy to go back and look at the show, if you go out and you look at the post advertising this show, I actually put her links like this into the description, describing what the conversation was going to be about. Now, I say that because I know that a lot of people are lazy, and all they do is they look at the image saying that it's me and you on a show at 7 p.m. Central on Monday night. They don't actually open up and read all the words. But if they read the words, they'll get a description of what your background is and where they can find you. So feel free to go out there and use that. Everyone's saying another great show. Great show. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Nikki's calling me out saying, listen to him calling everyone out. Rude. I just call it as I see it. And I know that a lot of people don't read it. So do me a favor.
Tell him, girl. I'm just kidding.
She's supposed to be on my side. I'm about to see you. So shh. Don't run away. I want to talk to you afterwards.
Okay.
But everybody, there's everything for Jessica. Make sure you go like, follow, share her. She's fantastic. If you have not seen her show, go watch. It is absolutely fantastic. She's fantastic. The information is awesome. The guests she has on are fantastic and amazing. And it's not just Bigfoot talk. It's everything talk, kind of like what we did here. She covers so much. I found a reason to use the word. She has a plethora of knowledge. I've been trying to find a way to use plethora today. So she has a plethora of knowledge. Go out and watch her shows. Enjoy them. Like, follow, share, as everyone should be doing with her already. Thank you for coming on. I absolutely appreciate you coming on again. And I'm already looking forward to the next time you're on. But
Thank
like I
you.
said, don't run away. I'm going to throw you backstage to say goodbye to everybody.
All right. Well, thank you. I want to thank all the people that watch my shows and stuff. I've seen everybody in the chat tonight. And so thank you all for coming over here and hanging out with us tonight, too. So, and thank you for having me, Tom. It's always fun.
Absolutely. You're so much fun to have. One of my favorite. So, all right. I'll be right back with you. All right, everyone. That's the show. I hope you enjoyed it. I always have a lot of fun with Jessica. If you want to know how to reach me, I just flipped it over to mine. So I am at facebook.com, Stuff I Never Learned, Twitch, twitch.tv, Stuff I Never Learned, YouTube, youtube.com at Stuff I Never Learned. If you want to contact me directly, I am at stuffineverlearned@gmail.com. Feel free to reach out. Again, the same thing as I asked with Jessica. I'd appreciate it if you like, follow, share. Mine is mostly because I'm still growing my community, and I want people to know that they are not alone if they have questions or if they're trying to learn something, if they are just trying to find information out, they can reach out. Have people reach out. Have people come watch. Have people come do whatever. I don't mind people just sitting and watching and never even participating because they're going to learn something. And that's a big part of my show is learning something. I appreciate y'all coming on. I do have, stand by. You know me, I'm always forgetful when it comes to looking at the very last part. Let me see who's on my show and when my next show is. Stand by. 1 second, I swear. What the heck is today? So my next show is not until the 23rd of September, so I will have a week off. And I am bringing on someone. Her name is Carolyn Ulrich. And I met her at one of the local shows here, and she is another fantastic person. I will get her right up and posted as always, but look for the advertisement. Again, I will be off for a week, and I will be back on the 23rd. Other than that, everybody have a fantastic night, week, couple of weeks. Much love. Stay safe, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.